Welcome to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Onvic and Crown. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. Today I'm joined by George Eny, the president of the APA, and John Raymond. He's a consultant with the APA. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
We're going to start off on a bit of a different point today. We always cover news and what's topical. We're going to go a little more general. The future of the industry.
This was a show that George and I have actually wanted to do for a while. We didn't bring a crystal ball, but we brought some sort of large piston to use as our crystal ball. And from what we've seen in the industry, we're going to give you an idea what you as the consumer will be driving or reading about in the near future. So one of them is, as we've been talking about for a while, electrics. Over the next 5 years, we're going to see more and more electric adoption. And in basically in every brand, so every major brand will have an electric vehicle within the lineup. So,
but that doesn't mean you'll be driving a fully electric vehicle, just that they'll be available. And that governments, particularly with metro markets like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, will be giving you freebies and gifts to get people into the electric vehicles.
Well, we've seen resistance from buyers.
Oh, right now you can lease in the States an electric vehicle for $49 a month in California. And it's a Fiat brand, and there's one or two other ones as well. And that's because the car makers are being forced to meet mandates set by government that the public isn't buying.
Well, we see this disconnect between all these cars are available, and even when we go on trips and we're saying, is it electric? When's it going to be electric? They're introducing them, and still sales remain stubbornly below 1%.
Unless governments, feed us heavy rebates as consumers.
Even with the rebates, they're not really succeeding in the market, but it's coming.
Yeah.
The other thing is the history of the automobile shows that often the new technology is built on the old. Mm-hmm. So it's possible that you won't have a fully electric vehicle, but we'll have a long transition period where there'll be a partial electric, a hybridized vehicle which exists already, which is not a big bump to make a purchase out of. And I think that's, so when you see those people saying that by 2022 it's all electric, what is it, Tony Seba or whatever? That was a big splash. Not going to happen. Not that way.
Well, if you read the fine print, they're saying.
So an example of this would be the Hyundai Ioniq, which is available as a hybrid, which is
You don't plug it in. You drive it like a regular vehicle, but it does use about 25%
a plug-in
less
electric,
fuel.
which is called a PHEV, and a pure electric. So that's on the same platform. The cars essentially look the same in a couple changes, but that's the type of car that we'll be seeing in terms of power source.
Well, I think we're resistant to change as humans, and
Correct.
we change until it's more painful not to change. But even 10 or 15 years ago, people would say, no way would I ever go into a hybrid. Now it's like, yeah, I'm thinking about a hybrid. So we are pushing that way.
People were predicting when 10 and 15 years ago, let's say, when the Toyota Prius was still quite new and Honda had the Insight, people were saying by 2020, fully 30% of cars will be hybrid. Yeah. And energy costs stayed level, and the public didn't follow. So it's anyway. Let's go down your list, John.
Saying that, the internal combustion engine or gas engine will continue. It's getting more and more efficient. Who would have guessed 50 miles per gallon out of these cars? And recently, Mazda introduced a new engine, gas engine that works similar to a diesel engine, and that car. And that engine will actually probably replace an Atkinson-type engine that they had in hybrids. It's that efficient. So
whenever we get asked this, my colleagues, all of us, it's like, as long as gas stays cheap, and our gas in Canada is cheap on the world market, like compared to most countries. As long as gas is cheap, we're not going to change over from it until we're forced into it. And the new engines are so economic. A lot of times we're telling people, you can think about that hybrid, but as we've discussed on earlier shows, you're not going to see, you might as well stick with the ICE engine.
If you don't live in an urban environment, you don't necessarily need that. Other things that we're going to see that are going to be very common are 48 volt instead of 12 volt battery systems, starter generators, things like that. Because of all the electronics cars have, we need more and more juice or power going into them. So they are available now on certain luxury vehicles that will proliferate through different models. And within 5 years, I would say in the near and luxury market will have not necessarily heavier batteries, but batteries that are able to deliver significantly more power.
So this is to augment, because you have so many systems now running off that battery.
Safety systems. steering,
memory stuff, and everything is running off
even
that
your
battery
instrument
now.
display. I mean, you have a 50-inch screen almost in your
People are
car.
wondering why batteries fail in 3 years or 4 years. It's like you're asking a lot of that battery. So
3 years is about 3.5 years is
Yeah.
about that. Some consumers don't like stop-start, but that is here to stay.
well,
You know, a whole bunch of engines turning over while you're in traffic. It's just inefficient. And so it's nice to see that, that issue is being tackled. And then on the car of the future, they'll be quiet when they're not running because the engine will be off.
we're seeing more of that even down at lower levels, entry levels. We'll be back with more of this discussion on the Lemonade Car Show. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Omvic and Crown. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm here with George Innie, the president of the APA, and John Raymond. He's an industry consultant and with the APA. We're talking about the future of cars. Go.
Okay, so safety tech will accelerate. We see it on brands such as Toyota and Honda that have brought it out throughout their models.
Incredible, like that they migrated down to the more affordable vehicles like the Civic. In Toyota's case, it's everything, right? Even the Yaris,
Everything.
except the Tacoma, apparently.
Except the Tacoma, correct.
But has emergency brake warning, will apply the brakes for you, and either blind spot detection or lane departure warning as well.
So what does this mean? Cars are going to get heavier, be filled with equipment, and we're going to have to learn to adapt our driving, or we're going to have to understand the systems that we have in these cars.
Well, it's like getting a new computer. You don't pull it out of the box and start on it. You have to
Well,
learn.
you kind
how
of
to
do with a new car. And then hopefully you continue learning within the first few weeks while
Right.
you own it.
And then we're going to have some big brotherly love because such as one or two car manufacturers, they're going to be able to go online to our car, talk to the ECU or the brain of the car, and update the software so we won't have to go to retailers. So Tesla's already doing that. BMW is doing that. Audi's moving to it. But I would say in the next 5 years, this will be very common for a brand to go in, see the usage of a consumer, update the systems as necessary.
I understand why it still creeps me out. Can I say that? It's
Yeah, of course.
Like if it's still your car because you're maintaining all that control over it, charge me less. Give it to me for nothing. The big brother's the right word, and it's like insurance companies with black boxes. I am not a fan.
I would tell you, in most cases, consumers will choose convenience,
Oh yeah.
even if it means giving up their right to privacy or their data. We already did it with our phones.
We do it
and
with
so-
everything. Yeah.
So we're now going to be doing it with our cars.
I just think we do it sometimes unknowingly.
And that brings up another point, George, says we do it with our phones. The way that we purchase a car will change. Now we have choices such as pay cash, lease, or finance. The fourth option will be just like our cell phone, where we're going to take a subscription. And maybe on a battery-operated car, the battery subscription will be from, let's say, Ontario Power Generation. The car lease will be through another entity. So Volvo is experimenting with this, and it's virtually the same format as a cell phone contract in Europe with their new XC60 and XC40.
John, people have been saying for years that, retailing is broken, retailing is sick, it's going to change. But in fact, we see that with the possible exception of Tesla, which is like a company-owned store where you order the vehicle, most of the work is being done online. It's still a traditional environment, right?
So I agree with you. As a previous retailer, the model won't change, but we will have a fourth option, and that's pay for use, very similar to a cell phone model, and specifically when we start looking at battery electrics.
And will that be tied to a particular car, or is it going to be like a car to go where you can
It will
have
be
any
tied
number?
to a car, and a car line. You will still transact at a dealer. You will still be having a contract through a financial arm of a manufacturer, but you'll have a fourth avenue. So the other things that are changing rapidly is 5 and 6 speed transmissions will be passé, and we're moving into 9 and 10 speeds
That's for fuel economy.
for fuel economy.
And we're losing the manuals because we can't do it ourselves.
Yeah, manual transmission is almost gone.
Not in Europe. Try and
No.
rent something that's not a manual.
Yeah. And there will be a lot more self-learning in the vehicles. So one of the big bugaboos is consumers understanding what they have in terms of active cruise control, other items, other safety items, that we will have tutorials within the dash that will have tips on how to drive safer, prompts how to drive safer, conserve fuel, utilize features of the cars that we're not using now.
I still urge viewers to take advantage when their dealerships offer nights when you can come back in, or take advantage of talking.
It's called second delivery
Yeah,
by many
I really,
dealerships.
really like that idea, and I really urge people to take advantage of that. Go back in when you've had your car a couple weeks or a month, and then learn about it, because once you've been driving it, most of us don't use all the things that are available, and it's a really good idea once you've been acclimated to driving it to go back in and let them show you. And don't hesitate to go back in and ask if you're not sure. I've had my Bluetooth loaded into cars so many times, I forget.
And that's bringing up Bluetooth and connectivity. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto will be in about 70 to 80% of all cars within the next 24 months. And that will basically our interface to our infotainment systems. It's, if we understand our phones, we'll understand what's on the dashboard.
I gotta admit, that's one thing I like, is seeing something familiar, because a lot of times you get in a car and it's a whole new system, and it's very distracting, and you're stabbing away at a touch screen and you don't know what you're doing, and it's bad. It's bad for driving, it's bad for distraction. If you already recognize the buttons and it's your stuff, it does help, you know, acclimate yourself to
But also,
the car.
it'll mean that your system won't be obsolete, because of course the car you buy today, whatever's in the dash is there for 15 years.
Correct.
But your phone, you're changing every 3 years or
Or
more.
more.
Right, so the early infotainment systems now already are just looking pretty
Archaic.
bad. Yeah, and anything from 2011 or 2012 is looking pretty dated at this point.
And especially nav systems.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll have questions in our Ask a Mechanic segment on the Lemonade Car Show. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Onvic and Crown. I'm joined now by George Innie, the president of the APA, and we welcome Chris Muir, our mechanic, in our Ask the Mechanic segment. We're going to get right to it. This one might be more for you than for Chris, but I'm going to start with you, George. I need some assistance dealing with an unscrupulous auto dealer who presented a certification so I could get the license plate from the ministry without performing a safety on the vehicle. The airbag light is on and the steering was shifting to one side while driving. I bought the vehicle certified on the 12th of August. I'd like to know the legal ramification in dealing with this.
First of all, when you're looking at certification, we've got to be sure we're talking about the same thing. So many car makers offer a program called a certification, where if the dealer sells a used vehicle certified by supposedly the manufacturer, you get like a good warranty with it, and it's supposed to have been looked over, like to any major collision damage, oil leaks, worn tires, all that stuff would either be flagged and repaired, or alternatively makes the car not eligible to be sold as a certified used car. So for the car maker, it's actually a marketing program. They don't do very much policing. If the dealer were to check off the form and things fail, it's often, there's no feedback loop that would punish the dealership or discipline them for doing it. This is a little different. This is a government certification program required in Ontario when you sell a used vehicle. And maybe, Chris, you want to talk about that?
Yes, certainly. There's 96 pages worth of standards that a vehicle has to meet in order to pass a certification in this province, and clearly this one doesn't. The channels that you take, you're very likely going to end up taking this dealer to small claims in order to get the vehicle repaired.
What about complaining to the Ministry of Transportation?
I was just about to say, you report it immediately to the Ministry of Transportation. They will send out an inspection officer. And whoever's name is on the certification, not the selling dealer, but the technician that signed off on it, will be held accountable for the safety standards of that vehicle. If it's something, however, this is where it gets really tricky. If it's a broken windshield, well, it wasn't broken when I looked at it, and that certification is not a guarantee of the prolonged mechanical health of the vehicle. It was fine and operating when I looked at it. And that is all that a certification is. This one, you'd probably have grounds to contest that with what looks like to be longer lasting problems than would have appeared after the inspection.
And the concern, Lorraine, is when government puts out a program that has its seal on it, the public expects that it's going to work to a high standard, but in fact it doesn't. This is a very loose program in Ontario, and it's unfortunate that cars are sometimes passed for things that shouldn't pass.
So in spite of the changes,
What I would suggest is you get someone else to look at it within a few days of the certification, of the signing of it, if you believe that it's wrong, and that they, who's a technician, and that they sign, or a shop sign, that there's a problem. That will encourage the ministry to actually investigate, perhaps make their job a little bit, their intervention a little more robust.
So a different set of eyes on it.
Yeah, the technician who signs off on a vehicle, what are they getting? Like $50 for certification, 75? What's the
No,
rate?
generally not. It depends on what the shop is paying for
But what is the
certification.
shop charging typically?
The
right now?
shop can be anywhere, I've heard, as low as $69 for a certification, all the way up to a couple hundred.
So if they're doing that for a dealer, it's going to be toward the lower end of what you said. It's a regular customer, but they're actually giving the dealer a very big service, because they're putting their blessing, the government's blessing, on the vehicle. And where the problems occur is that for a very small dollar fee, they help the dealer sell the vehicle, and sometimes they shouldn't. They should really be just working on looking at the vehicle, not thinking of their customer.
Okay. 2003 Corolla with brake cylinders rear have to be replaced because of a brake oil leak. Do you think the shoes also have to be replaced?
They should be. They're likely contaminated, and the brake fluid will actually start to eat the bonding agent and the friction material on the shoe. It'll make the shoe very gummy. The brakes may stick, they may bind, they may not apply properly, or the friction material could fall off the metal backing.
So these things all go together, so
just replace the whole kit and caboodle. You're talking about $50 difference.
Okay. 2013 Honda Fit, the U-shaped opening for the back hatch. We've heard this before. We've had this problem, I think, before. It's been giving some problems to them for some time. They've cleaned it and fixed it, but it's still faulty. 2013 has to push or pull the handle into the correct position so I can unlock the rear door. So we've got a rear door that's not opening. Do you know anything?
It sounds like the latch is gumming up on it, so it's partially engaged, and you've got to wiggle the handle in order to get that latch to disengage so you can operate the lock cylinder on it. It's like, remember trying to get into your car, the kids are pulling up on the handle and you're trying to unlock the door? Yeah. Well, this handle's pretty much permanently pulled up and you're trying to unlock that door.
You're telling him he's got to replace the part. Is that where he's going to go?
It sounds like that's where he's going to go. If they've tried to service it, if they've tried to lubricate it and it didn't get fixed, at that point he's replacing the part.
It's a 13. Dunzo for warranty?
Unless he's got some kind of an extended warranty, very likely.
Even if he started the process of complaining about it previous to?
He could contact the manufacturer and his dealer in order to follow up on that, but he would have to have a service history of trying to repair that problem multiple times.
The rule on warranty is that it's from the date of your complaint, but the trick is, was the complaint recorded properly, and are you able to say that it's the same problem that came back that was fixed then? So to give you an example, if someone is complaining about...
Give me the example when we come back, okay? We'll be back to finish this up on the Lemonade Car Show. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Onvic and Crown. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm here with George Innie, the president of the APA, and Chris Muir is our mechanic. George, I cut you off very rudely before we went to break. Please continue your thought on warranties.
Well, not rude at all. I'm glad to be back to finish the answer. So here's what you do if you're near the end of a warranty and you think you have a problem that it should cover. Let's say it's something intermittent, doesn't come up all the time. When you need to be documented, so ideally you would go into the service facility, the dealership, and make sure they write down exactly what the problem is. So not just engine noise, but the actual type of sound, where it might be coming from, so that they can do the appropriate inspection.
And you get a copy of this.
And you ask, because not in all cases, you're not always given a copy of the repair order when it's a warranty repair. Sometimes that's kept for the manufacturer. So keep your records. If you can't do that, then at the very least, some kind of a written correspondence to the dealership so that you're on record. And then if the problem recurs past the end of the warranty, you can establish that it happened here. Now, if it's a year past, they're going to argue that they fixed it, and this is a recurrence of a completely different problem. But if you've had a history of a thing that won't go away, then this is the way to start, is by making sure you're on record.
So establish it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Chris, I have a question for you. A reader would like you to clearly delineate the difference between four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, part-time four-wheel drive, selectable four-wheel drive. A lot of these are used interchangeably, even in ads and by manufacturers, so I understand how it can be confusing. But what? Oh, okay. I thought you were going to jump in. No, they're not, Lorraine. Yes, they are, George. Okay. So, Chris, explain mechanically what.
Certainly. So to break it down, you've really got two types of drive systems. You've got all-wheel drive, in which all of the time, all four wheels drive, and there will be a center differential. So I can send a portion of the power to the front and a portion to the rear, and I can vary that in an all-wheel drive situation. I'm meant to drive an all-wheel drive car on the pavement, on the grass, on the snow. All of the time, all four of those wheels should be driving. Then we get into a four-wheel drive, in which case I lose that center differential for a fixed center differential. So it's going to send 50% of the power to the front, 50% of the power to the rear. And the majority of the time, those will be a selectable four-wheel drive. It'll say 2 high, 4 low. You might have a multi-gear transfer case. You may have only a 2-gear transfer case where it's 2 high and 4 high, or 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. And that should only be driven when the coefficient of friction varies on the surface, meaning that it's slippery out.
That's also called part-time.
And it's also called part-time four-wheel drive. And then you'll get into these automatic four-wheel drives or full-time four-wheel drive, which is a variance on the two systems. Generally, they'll disengage the front axle but have the transfer case locked. So you'll get the power spinning down the drive shaft. It'll get to the front axle and it won't do anything until the computer senses the wheel slip. And
So-
that's
What do consumers,
Need to know?
yes,
All right,
when
so
they're going to
if you're
purchase?
buying the average consumer vehicle, that's going to be a compact or mid-size SUV, basically a big station wagon. And it has the simplest user interface, which is you never have to worry about it.
Drop it in D
Right.
and go.
Yeah. If you're more serious or you're buying a truck-based vehicle, then you'll have the option of driving in two-wheel drive.
yeah,
And it saves fuel.
it does.
It also means may save wear on some of the mechanical
Yeah,
components.
the older ones were better because you could actually get out and unlock the hubs, and that would disconnect your front axle from driving
Older
and
is
everything
like
else.
25 years older.
Oh, absolutely, as in 25 years older. Some of the more recent imported vehicles had automatic locking hubs, but the majority of them now have unit bearings and actually spin those front axle components all the time. So you're seeing a tremendous amount of drag on the drive line anyways. You're just not sending power to that front drive line.
Is there any advantage to somebody, a lot of people are dedicated, they want all-wheel drive cars no matter what. There's a lot of people that don't need all-wheel drive cars.
Almost no one needs it. What you need are snow tires and front drive,
That's
and
right.
that will take you most of the places you need to go. But we don't want to have a shovel, ever. And in that case, for getting out of a deep spot, I would say all-wheel drive will help you in a way that you
All-wheel
won't get
drive
stuck.
gives you a confidence and a surety, sometimes falsely placed, because even though we can drive forward, we may not be able to steer or stop.
And we all brake the same.
Exactly.
And I think that's
exactly
when you
that.
see someone flying by you in an SUV, they've
And
got
then
their all-wheel
20
drive there in the
minutes later
ditch.
down the road, the thing's left.
Very
left
much
the
so.
sign.
One of my favorite police officer quotes is, what's the first thing anyone says to you when you meet them in the ditch? He goes, they're always surprised to be there.
Yeah, I had four-wheel drive.
Yeah, because they're, it's made them into superheroes, except the braking, and actually your center of gravity is up higher, and you weigh more
Yep.
traditionally, and off it goes, which
It's
is never good.
the reason one of my favorite winter vehicles is a Subaru. All-wheel drive, nice low center of gravity. It's stable, and it's still got that traction to get you going in the snow. Doesn't steer or stop any better, but it'll get you going.
I've got an Impreza out there, and I'm impressed. It's doing well. I really like it. Now, I can't believe we're talking about snow, but yeah, it's
It's
right around the
coming.
corner, and get the winter tires on and get the car tuned up.
Should remind people also the winter tire ratings are on our website.
Absolutely.
No charge. You can figure out what's best for you.
You guys do a nice comparison. You do you test them all, and all the information's in one spot, so it's a great go-to
That's right.
for a tire comparison. Excellent.
best piece of advice for those, shop around, check out the reviews on the APA, and buy the best set you can afford.
Absolutely. That's all the time we have for Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Omvik and Crown. I'd like to thank my guests, Georgini and Chris Muir, and you viewers.